na condolence di Kenya no mumela ke konton sanla kadu ngalon ne ko Kenya be Africa banko la kan andum banku bala fana moyde Africa andi to warta baba kele andum fana eleman sekunda nada ku kende jamala ke membe dending Africa la liberation de kamen fo ka Africa bondi tubabul block no ani ila man sekunda dol min bota je mi yalon ko sitanun je ye katal jamala ke ani hani mi yalon ko be oppositional fana kono e be do ko kala mi yalon ko amandan Kenya da mala bara Africa mumel nafa so kamala nsedang nsem fanan kamala fa mol be kan ka fo Kenya no le ko ila nyaron ko min banda ila opposition banda pour ala sase amen junuba kafaro la ning arjano no bodaje I think nsekata fay do man nim fanan nyinna court case to mimman sahaba ke ngaje anala dokolu akabo kitidla annun balafa wara baba ke fanane kawo jawo nyama because ngala kabla kata kitidla amandaro nyama numbara fokan nang saya ka findinam pour kana kiti wala ngaje labe nyame minke da momo long and so mbafala doron ko jojo minke jojo mbe sirin kido nyin kunna o kuma da baba kala kaje muneke tan nan yata raba kuma fanam pour ka bula because falli mamira ni mumo fanande mi yalon ko ase masi ba kuke ni abula prata asidi mbali ya suogono yala password ta bloko na se kalta kalnana kala kitiolta because ngalon ko Gambia prisonol e kamol sorondaming na kasol kono manke dlade mi yalon ko comme reform sol nyanda kala je baba kala bari wol manke so sam pour ka nyinja wo nyama be tentinga bala fa wata baba kala so nisa mansa kunda sa jibe no dal ya jibe akanata fa be damindo wala ya jibe mune ba sabu ka kan nyame ni atre se beldino la prata si so kona ka ala kitiol attend from there I think would make a lot more sense but that the world
yeah I think thank you very much Ibrahima ka kafu mafanang ka abambandi maybe ka dua Kenyan ol fanaye karung membeje wala muko rela odinga mu opposition nyaton ka kebala abela ko niko leo senu Darboe Gambia he's also been in the politics of Kenya for so long president ya nyini sinya sanji jama fawde among gagné no abarata fango jikitalo ko jama ka sunyala ko fang sako 2007 carte fayo menna tatna fam fo fitna basota Kenya banko kam for mo jamal fata je rela odinga ko ajigitalo ko atele wo gagné and a lot of observers also believe that there was a lot of widespread irregularity with that election. But aketa nyanya madrombe duala for alama ala sene monin kafuro kai. I think coming Spain is really important. Justice JT Waleitandi because Abdullah Sanyana loyal ko they are going to apply for bail on his behalf on medical grounds. Kaman kendea. So dalilo kambale mwana raf sasiro ke kiti bungola. Bankola puru ise katake kaje ko I wiste even though bankola loyal membeje I balanta o ko le bari anata kango dile ko I mem for wole be lola ko the state has to examine him ka make so ko ajato be sahiring as a keno motime alon ko isa bulano bella mun kukan ko ajato lo man sahaya bari one of the things Ibrahim interesting things probably ngani ko mala nun janni binanu lafta nga men jibe wole mu kuti membe dending kuma kan la president Adama Barrow men sata nga funun kibaro to ko president Adama Barrow is doing a lot of interesting conversation right now kacha dima kende dima le be soto kan ani GRTS tema so mbe molu finance sila mol men yalon ko probably they have an interest ka long president o yala baluo kenyamen kabira dinding mankunda ala ta tuabudu ala dungo politiko kono ani GRTS la CDC Seba Kacha Kane. CDC Sefanang is also an MPP supporter, by the way, but he has a show on GRTS. And President Adama Barrow Kacha Kono Adiamuta ala Dungola no political kono up to the extent katafok tumo me alanko ya tombon kake UDP la nyaton kodi I presidency fanang ganye nyame. So Adiamuta je kaitandi ko 2016 sangola ako Dr. Isatou Touray aning modul fango UDP party kono adiam seka nyolu kata Ramzia Jab nyolu ako wolu findita kananum pour asesilo walang Dr. Isatou Touray for him to withdraw and allow Dr. Touray to for UDP to back Dr. Touray pour UDP Dr. Touray fasa but the president Adama Barrow may tend wolu muko akaye banne aka mansong but for me the interesting bit is akola ya dawala muso fanga ya kolle Ufanang yo kuma kan killing wala fay to the extent ka fay ko yala no ko mol man la fi UDP te gagné no la. So al bambu Dr. Touray ko madura le Dr. Touray fasa. I think it was a very interesting conversation, very revealing. I Fenjamale la Kenabato about a lot of things many alonko, they've been happening around that time. I find it really interesting. I don't know what your immediate reaction is to that,
Ila former boss.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
la boss London President Barrow.
Of course, yeah.
As senior communication officer about another OIC. So ninka ko ila boss mbato nyeka wala ka fa ko Barrow muila. Barrow muila boss le dum bari.
Na boss lende. Yeah.
Kachani ala full Barrow kachal be diarinde because yala momo Barrow lo yala ko kachala lo. Ay kachano baba kele anu wati do nangaji kachalan kamin folam nyindiko ngamra Barrow nyanda manni ka kaw fola baba kele wala nyi skandol mi yala ko ay moy kende.
Yeah.
Because na ke wati falli akachani kala fila continue do. Tuwabul Savo, he's a storyteller. And he does it akakele in a very unique fashion.
Yeah.
He has the capacity and the potential puru ay mol carry with him ani mole tanyo puru ay fumole kom na that dono ka fole ko ha mesira mala mo ne koma. Okay back so for calling sort of 4 months of bang but more base son nyina ko Barrow ay kachano ay talent wonole. So kuombo nyama I think nyanto kumain la bawakel na Gambia political kono nga kacha na kawala nga communicate in a language mi yalan ko mo safe for ham because Gambia mo jama man karang ani mil karang defana ku jama ka national level e ko for ham no back.
Yeah.
So in nina da gibe the specific issue amin kajaga especially puru Barola kake coalition nyaton koti in prior to 2016. I mean Isa Jibe Nyaunya, at that time, I can understand why Ibafolo President Barrow Akana run, right? Because one, the Bible says him for he's a political novice. He's not a political novice to such extent because I'm involved in political economy, but because of Gambia in the wrong. Nimanta karamoto, iman karang wale meje ko degree bale be bulo wale man secondary to ka midalo ko ha kari o man competent wale ite man qualify pour kadung political kono nyam suko commence
what if darajo fonga Carola probably at the time mo jamal fana malong
exactly
those concerns were also there
exactly but I can also understand Dr. Isatou was a powerhouse then, not a powerhouse politically but intellectually, and also ala doku amikan Gambian where I say most of the babakele so atu fana the babakele no but Barrow fana clearly has a level of conviction a lot of fana and a lot of fana ko abe party ming konondo minka the United Democratic Party mi yalanko akumata la ngafo ko niaje Barrow fana jikila nyina ko party men ko ma mollate la Paman ki party nyinda mari bari fana coalition of min fana men ko ma most of the such that government also secretary fanya so but yara jibe nima naman conviction in soda I man say I'm in soda biya also so we can say that Barrow had foresight and also a conviction to the Babakele, courage for Nansotala because Naman courage he was almost bullied to leave, at least according to our story. But he did not.
Yeah, no, I ndala immediate reaction momenti wala mu first of all la faka song imaleko. I think the president should continue to speak more in Mandinka and other local languages. Nte fango nte kundingo nte nga sembo soto. Na nyaton kolu, especially the president, for majority of the times, ala jama kono diamu abebe kela mandika kangol lelti ani fenkolu nanying local language sol. Kadung nyaton kaya ibe molle nyaton kaya kang. Ibe menu nyaton kaya kang inyantale ikalom fanang ikam memfo. In most cases ninga atara fanan nse fere keno kaje ko kana sorlal fon kana tare ning moltembe men nyaton kaya kang. That is the most ideal in my view. Ninde nga silo soto tumando baro ni atara num nte dabe president wala yamar lal kono BITILO la I will encourage him to continue to speak in the local languages because nim president Barrow fonga dedika diamu nanyin kangola wo kono le fongo ikala ma fonje member kono aka fintindi no waleto and that's when he's able to communicate with people yalon communication tara nara ite membe diamu kan ni be diamu ke kan ikala file moliye moyni nyaado be nyala so ni be diamu ka mol man trakete moy nyaado be nyala ila communication is not effective.
Yes.
So andunde mam fengo fenne jeje to have our leaders speak in our local languages, if it means being more effective in communicating. I think mbawo kan banko dolto men yalon ko ila banko dingol la kangolu jama ke la politiko ken wolella. Senegal is one country banko le me yalon ko surwa kango e ka fala député bu ngokono basteji ni lafte surwa kan fo ni lafte français kan fa traité le bul ikaji fanan ila nyaton kolu jama ni be diam kam banko dingole e ka diam yen surwa kango la. You go to other African countries, it's like the same. Kenya in black kodangoldo, ebe Swahili fola anin fen kodangol. And tingamero kumata nyame wole muko, hadama dingo ila kango is an essential part of who you are. Ika kango memfo, umu kumari mbarati ila hadama yado. Because fenjamal beje na ado nina chusanoldo, inke tambindini na kango lel. So niye mo la kango mute buldurom, you fenjamal mute bul. Tubabo le wala tina. Brinata yela kangolta e forcengang because yala no ko ningela kangolta mbela buko le read la mbela cultural le karanna andu wokonon tol fonkana nyinam fangol la. So I think I agree with you that I see no reason why the president shouldn't be allowed to speak to people in the local languages. Now okay, come ka mem fo mol ka faham kule, and then that's the essence of governance. Nini mol ka nyomo do nga banda ini nyomo kango men na umang important ko rek ndela mirror. But for me, I think on the whole substance of President Barrow kumakangola I meant for member dinding, I think I meant Tonya and Bambandi. Wole muko mo jamalel be juturu nung ala chances la. Amanka te fon kunningo, but let me say opposition fangola chances of winning at the time. Koya for nyaming jamalu yajelo ko onyingo kay satol ninku mu mananku neten na doro mu opposition party de katefon ada fonsen dabla je doro. But it looks like even at the time it will form a jiko fon soto ko be gagner la no. I think at that time coming Barrow fon me President Barrow me yitandi even UDP la baramadul bejele e man lanunko they had real chances of winning. Aku aji am sekanyol fintita kana ni moko tangol. But thankfully also, UDP dingol fanambe jele men yalon ko at the time they believe ko nying fombe ganyela fonte ganyela lafta le ngandabula kono anu nimben dabula kono lafta UDP le to itara kaito nyimbala. I think at the end of the day, we all saw what happened. I think the lesson there is nimmolu tara fo iman lete la fama. Ite fama le fama la dorong. I think that's quite essential. But like I said, it's a conversation that Mbemobe encouraged la purisa la moya jibe. I think it's very interesting. He talked about, even how
Barrow mukachaladi, Barrow bula kachadoro mol bula mole haji dole so te kata minna.
No, but it's important. It's important. He's the head of state, nim president of Diamukang. I think it's important that people also listen to understand things from his own perspective.
As an NPP kachalo wadi.
But they have a national importance.
Okay,
because
but
the things that happen behind the scenes. Ko many along ko tumando bato, mo jamal ma wo long men ketanun dumala. Many along ko manke kenebato. Misal fe, I think it's also important for our historical records. I can understand kumo dol fatanun commando many along ko sometimes akasonda wiswaso dol samana mola karola. But I think overall it is important that we are kind of taking stock of cool menalonko because one of the things in 2016 ninkumu mosafo ko sankumari mbale mu Gambia tari ko kono because 2016 lemu president Koto Jambela maralo banta Gambia bankoka so ninku belari wo nyama. I think how we got to that position mun simfal tamata fom futata woro if we have the president recount it from his own perspective it's important.
Mambala wala. That's a good point. But also, when was the last time President Adam Barrow and journalists so see that Miyalonko is not a friendly journalist to Alaman Sakunda and to the government of the Gambia? Once so President Barrow for to be at a level where I be comfortable enough. Akana ning journalist Miyalonko kasi Miyalonko ikakudodi welda malal puriyela yela informational sade band. But journalist Miyalonko fanebe sila le ya challenge on policy, on programs of the Gambia. Ofanon kumadel because hani man sakunda Miyalonko hani jang na America jan Trump nyama de kolu meda nala attack on the media lumolu. Aka question ota journalist Miyalonko. You know what I'm saying? but mbukoje bake you know ni media anala man sakunda kata media household to ma mi alon ko be pare la pour ka ko sona di bulo ko wala ka kachala fo mi alon ko talin wala malo what a banko sambal la there has to be also media accountability that also has to be with somebody mi alon ko is going to challenge President Barrow wala kacha fo da matem, but especially programmatic issues mi ko as a whole not to account on those things, because mantara code it's very hard puruka foko nyimman sakunda ning Mustafa Darboe for example wala any serious journalist mi ko Gambia to ask them questions about a lot of things mi ko ka finti na Gambia ibiko back. So I think they need to do better in that respect. You know, not to run away from anything, but also ka tandira control, we have nothing to hide. Sa finti no jangana ndita Peter Gomez da man na CJ week sta no in media house for now wala nin journalist kare sa sino mi ko it's been seen to be adversarial to us, not adversarial but our reporter mostly indict us. Yeah, you come and set the record straight.
Yeah, elo mu point kumarin baladi, but I think at this point also, you know, to just give kudos to Dr. Sisa, I think he's trying, he's really doing well. He speaks to as many media houses as possible, like Dr. Sise. I think that is needed, but I agree with you that the president can do more in order to kadiamu mole, you know, more in the sense that, you know, akafindi fanang akadiamu. I agree with you, but I think he has had a few interviews. I don't know when was the last one. I think QTV that Alusi said diameter. But just to give you also a small bit of background in terms of how probably Office of the President signed ike mira nyamen kibar janjam, because ndenga dogo kenu office ni kono jela at the State House. I was part of the office many alonko ndolel kamara president wala kachal ning anin kibatara la kuala ni hakilo bakam 2016-17 kana for 2018. You know, Office of the President was very open to the media. You know, we had there was something called the Media Month, or the Media Week. Ekaje le president Adama Barrow ekaje tilikilingo kono anin kibata la ninkibaje jenal kasi kakacha jamba soto. You know, and then also we used to also have like every week lokung ninkibata la ninkibaje jenal ka kacha soto membe den presidency la kola masakunda kono ananyem fensiva kono bari meya tinanu at the time wokwenyi nata stop is because of a lot of issues men keta kujamal men yalon ko be dending journalist ol famo manyala ibarolu, you know, ike pare nyame ka fo kumol men fo ananyem fensiva kono no, which is also a legitimate problem, because the problem moment sort was that because Jembe was in office for too long, 22 years, and what 22 years kono mosa fo fanko hanin journalism sorota amo amanke obe journalism ti bafala menako is at a high, you know, it was not that coming in terms of professionalism and in ethics, you know, we had challenges. Yes. Because Gambia journalists kebal nin journalist beto Jamal Beje Jamal lil fanam borda because of, you know, ye Gambia kole andi manyame. So birin Jambe botaje nata kibar tala nin kibar jenna Jamal men soto, they were also not prepared for, you know, an open democratic space at the time. So ikaje fa ondruka problem moment soto in State House. Journalists were taken a kana president interview in Gino ena, you know, in Capo ena wara fongo hani samata kendo fongo eta du nekaje in school sol binaka. You know, you cannot have people like that in front of the president to be interviewing the president. Mol many alonko jama fongo, a lot of things probably, you know, I don't want to come across as if komembe journalists will talk yakang warambe kumaja wole foking. You know, I have huge respect for, you know, my colleague journalists in the media. And more but no problem on, you know, when I think during one of the press conferences, you know, president I think that was the last time that you know, President Barrow stopped engaging with the media directly.
Where were you?
Yeah, exactly. So coming, that was also a real challenge. Okay, na principal mutanola banco president, you put him before people many along wari betula embarrass la. They don't even know probably question on men yininkala manyana men yininkala niluntangon na renyanda me yalong kacha dol fango dol beje. You can even say code dolu. It's better you have that for the domestic audience. So those challenges I think Office of the President were na for silata is sabata coma in terms of their interaction with the media. But I agree with you that, you know, there could be a way that they can bring it back. Probably right now, call befisia kan be journalist also kan many alonko, they should be able to sit with the president and put him to task without necessarily embarrassing him, you know, ngol sort of Gambiele. But I guess fanang nyine kita nun silandati nu meat na nun office of the president sabata nun koma demanding. You know, we are getting a lot of reactions, Ibrahim, online. And then they are also engaging with the subject. Nga keep fenko do sort of membota mobulu ikafo meye ko Yankuba Manjang ko Ibrahima, you are really making me laugh. Basically, ibe memfokan President Barola ntali lalto ko weate jelendile. And then nga duri jawne sota jam. Duri jawne ko the only issue is Barrow's own credibility. He has narrated too many unfounded stories. So if Dudi memfoka wala mo ko President Baroka ay kuma jamal fo many alon ko jamal hakil flasoto ko, but I don't know. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what to think. Whether the president will deliberately come out to mislead people, no. I don't think.
Let me quickly say this. Let me quickly say this. I think
on the issue of local languages, Aliou Sane fanam benjibe kam ateko basically akade fanam bukela moy President Barola for those same reasons. So ate fanam fe coming President ka kumodul mensada, you know, yeah. So we have a lot of reactions, and then we have one guy also called Jainar. Jainar is questioning whether Ibrahim for more they extend an invitation really to the president. So he's saying probably not. You know, yeah. So we have one from Suleiman Jete also. I agree with you, Ibrahim. A non-partisan professional media should be able to give interviews and discuss public policies objectively. Unfortunately, many journalists seem to lack ethics and are easily swayed by emotions. So basically, journalists will ma nyameng ila doku kono. Ate fanambe sere ne ko tumando bato journalists will be sulala londo menna o inyanta kama nyameng ate fe maybe mo nyong sifal dul soto Gambia comment ka president la won nyon mo sifal koro. I don't know, Ibrahim, what do you have to say? I will give you the opportunity to have the last say na kibaro kum fajang.
No looking for the ranko ngalo neko, you know, being a president Barrow ngalo na sembo minti aning sembo manke minti fana momo be communication with Barrow office hani kabita bijenka fo enne ko, you know, that President Barrow mo de mi alonko obviously nyata de manne ka lon wala sarahule kan wala fula kan o musila de mi alonko comfortable de je baake. So it would also make sense nyata la mi alonko manka strong suit pour official protect Allah do ko, that's your responsibility. You're saving the president from himself and also from an embarrassment, which is likely going to arise out of an interview with Mia Konkeje in the past. But again, that is not an excuse for the president to excuse himself from public interaction with media houses who, in fact, he consider as adversaries. Because you have to realize, all of these media houses or journalists or Mia Gambia, they have a certain level of core following Mia certain level of people that you call follow. It's the same way here too. Milk Fox News GB. If you watch liberal media, like a CNN, you'll see GB, right? So Gambia is not very different, even though our media landscape is different. You know that better than me. But President Barrow Mabo from having what seems to what many people will consider as an adversarial journalism, or in fact, like much more, like investigative, like, or challenging him on issues that has to do with ila policy la nila programo. What do kukela President Barola about cool gana jindila dron. So even though the ethics of journalism ani manya ani kefan samanyameng ani kela dugo kenyameng is questionable, that's true. Na democracy hani sai mba develop kane ani na doku nyala ani na kir nyal kul hani sai kujuma bi nyanta felinal. But what the mamang enough kaje ko President Barrow pour ka si watu wade ka tali wonka don wala niata je watu wade na finda prani moy ka cha media households mi alon ko ngalon ko they are friendly to him. That's not what we need for our democracy. What we need for our democracy is for the president to be ready and willing to be challenged on important critical issues for the country, even if those issues make him uncomfortable. He has to be able to keep his composure the same way Nasi the Mane Kolanin Suru Akon compose Nyame, or you are prepared enough. Oh, I interview Kangola Miyanko, I'm comfortable. Because that's what we deserve. He is duty bound and mandated to ensure that animals communicate. But like, this is not going to do it. Running away because of the actions or inactions of journalists and how they carry themselves is not going to cut it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the anti-Ami Bojan Yininka, Fanambafulin, we are trying to protect him by sealing him from quote-unquote unprofessional or untrained or undertrained journalists. Itoka jewole nyama fanam largely. Ko mol many alonko, you want to make sure that ibe momo sambalanang and impressing on yake nanity kachaya dungi tema I can motime alonko they will understand the issues also because ni one fanam the same responsibility lebetul fanankang. What are you doing exposing the president to things many alonko is a malosinoama. But I agree with you. We should be able to have these conversations. Or is not enough. I think the president, there are people that he can talk to in the Gambia, in our journalism corps. In fact, I think it's been a long time. And then I think it's also safe to say most of our journalists have really, improved themselves over the years. Just like you mentioned, Mustafa Anyolu, Peter Gomez Nyolu, even Fat Touray Nyolu, Fat Kamara Nyolu, all these media houses, I think they should all be able to have an opportunity to sit down with the president and talk. But also, just like you also said, President Fanandin Yuniseshinole, Kacha, even not in English, but also even Nakangol Dofana. And I think the president has a huge skill set. Manam alaya so bakele, ninara kadiamu nanyin kangola. Ndenga mera nyantale, I will use bake, kadiamu mole, because na diamta mole nanyin kangolto, watu le fango mol ka mweku. Molka understand and they can relate. I think that should be taken advantage of. But Ibrahim Barakabake nga pa job sotejang ako, what is the proverb of the day? Proverb of the day na BITILO mansalingo nko sinyo ku buka sinyo kar. Nga wale fonung kibaro de dulato. Kung kafale nyam nali akoto londrongal safo molie ala Barakabake.
Pa job benda para jelo. Ako akakala fila probable la bukala vinia Barrow ko kacha.
Well, fancy Barrow la ko kacha. But ala baraka bake. Thank you very much indeed. Ngal beje ngal tento ala la mo kunyima kan ko nga fale nyaming al se bulan noma YouTube especially ali subscribe na channel odo BITILO beje ngal tarajal be BITILO la channel fla jela al se subscribe beto e ba jela ni nga dundi watu wada al saje alma tilo to diala alama mbeten kala katanin karatola wassalam ala baraka